My name is Alina. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a domestic helper in Dammam, Saudi Arabia. I've been here for nearly 6 months now, and honestly, I consider myself lucky. You hear all kinds of stories from other helpers, some really painful ones, too, but my experience has been okay so far. The couple I work for, Mr. and Mrs. Rahman, have always treated me with respect. I have my own room, 3 meals a day, and they even let me rest after lunch. I couldn't complain even if I wanted to. Mr. Rahman works in construction, so he's often away during the day. Mrs. Rahman stays home mostly and manages things around the house. They don't have kids, just a few relatives who visit from time to time. Life in the house was quiet and smooth. Until something strange happened when Mr. Rahman returned from a trip to his hometown a few weeks ago. He had gone to Al Qasim to check on an old family property that he hadn't visited in years. I didn't ask many questions, of course it wasn't my place, but when he came back, something about him felt different. I didn't notice it immediately, but little things started to build up. Before the trip, he was calm and easy to work with. Always said thank you, and never raised his voice. After he came back, though, he started getting irritated at the smallest things. One time I served tea a few minutes late, and he glared at me like I had done something terrible. It wasn't like him. He wasn't shouting, exactly, but the way he looked at me, sharp, cold, it made me feel small. I brushed it off at first. Maybe he was just tired from the journey. That's what I told myself. But it wasn't just that. One night, I heard him talking loudly in the living room. It was well past midnight, and his voice sounded tense. Curious, I got up quietly and peeked through the hallway. I expected to find him on the phone with someone, but when I looked, I saw him sitting alone on the floor, facing the wall, whispering something I couldn't understand. The way he sat there, completely still, like he was frozen, gave me chills. I went back to my room quickly and locked the door. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I casually asked Mrs. Rahman if her husband was okay. I tried to keep my voice light, like I was just making conversation, but I needed to know if she had noticed anything strange. She smiled politely and said he'd just been overworked lately, that visiting the old house must have brought back heavy memories. I nodded, pretending to understand, but something in her voice didn't sit right with me. It was like she wasn't telling me everything. From that point on, I started paying more attention. I noticed odd things. At around 3 a.m., almost every night, I would hear faint murmuring from the master bedroom. It didn't sound like an argument, more like chanting. Sometimes it was Mr. Rahman's voice, sometimes hers. I don't speak Arabic well, but even without knowing the words, I could tell the tone was unnatural. Like someone repeating the same phrase over and over. One night, curiosity got the better of me. I tiptoed to their door and leaned in, trying to catch a few words. Just as I placed my ear near the wood, the door creaked open by itself. I stepped back quickly. The room was dark, but I saw enough. Mr. Rahman was kneeling on the floor. His back was arched, and his head hung low. He was crying, loudly, but the sound wasn't right, it was shaky and deep, like it was coming from 2 people at once. His eyes were rolled back. Mrs. Rahman stood behind him, trembling, holding what looked like a small book to her chest. I didn't wait to see more. I turned around and ran to my room, my legs shaking the whole way. I locked the door and sat on the bed, hugging my knees. My heart felt like it was stuck in my throat. I didn't sleep that night either. But what scared me more was what happened the next day. At breakfast, Mr. Rahman came to the table as if nothing happened. He was clean-shaven, dressed neatly in a white robe, and even smiled at me. But when he smiled, I froze. His teeth looked longer than before. Not sharp, just off. And his eyes, they were fully black. No whites. Just dark circles staring right at me. I dropped the glass I was holding. It shattered on the floor, and I quickly bent down to clean it, pretending everything was fine. My hands were shaking, though. I avoided looking at him for the rest of the day. I didn't even tell Mrs. Rahman this time. What would I say? That her husband had demon eyes? For the next few days, I kept to myself. I did my work, I answered only when spoken to, and I avoided being alone in a room with him. Mrs. Rahman, on the other hand, was acting strange too. She looked tired, like she hadn't slept in days. I once saw her sitting in the kitchen at 4 a.m., just staring at the kettle like it would start talking. Finally, about a week later, she woke me up in the middle of the night. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she had been crying for hours. She didn't say much, just whispered, "Come with me." I followed her, not knowing what to expect. She led me back to their room. Mr. Rahman was lying on the bed, but his arms and legs were tied with white cloth. He was thrashing against the ropes, shouting something that didn't sound human. His voice had changed. It was deeper, and there were two voices speaking at once, one high-pitched and trembling, the other low and rumbling, like it was gurgling underwater. "He brought something back from the old house," she said, her voice barely audible. "Something that shouldn't have been disturbed." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, frozen, watching this man who once smiled kindly at me now growling like an animal. And then he screamed, a sound so sharp and angry it made the windows rattle. A thick, black mist came pouring out of his mouth, and for a second, I could see something inside the smoke. A face. Smiling, but not in a good way. It had no eyes, only empty sockets and a long tongue that almost touched the floor. I grabbed the edge of the dresser to stop myself from falling. Mrs. Rahman held a small book in her hand and began reading from it softly. It must have been a prayer. She wasn't Muslim either, but her voice didn't waver. I whispered my own prayers under my breath, whatever I could remember from home. We were both shaking. When the smoke finally faded, Mr. Rahman stopped moving. His head dropped to the side, and for a terrifying second, I thought he was dead. But then he coughed, just once, and opened his eyes. They were normal again. He looked confused, like he had just woken from a long sleep. "I don't remember anything," he whispered. Mrs. Rahman told me the next day that they had burned the old items from the house and called a religious healer to cleanse their home. She said everything would be okay now. But something inside me didn't believe it. I told her I wanted to go back to the agency. I didn't give her the real reason. I just said I needed a break. But the truth was, every night since that last incident, I kept seeing that face. Not in the room, not in the mirror, but in my dreams. And every time, it was smiling. I thought leaving that house would bring peace back into my life. I believed that once I stepped out of that place, the fear would fade with distance. But it didn't. Even after I was transferred to another family in Jeddah, the dreams followed me. Every night, the same thing. I would find myself standing in that dim bedroom again. Mr. Rahman was there, lying motionless, and above him floated the black smoke with that horrible face. No eyes, just darkness where they should have been. And always that grin, wide, mocking, like it knew I'd never really be free. I didn't tell anyone. What would I say? That a piece of something evil was living inside my sleep now? I focused on work. The new employers were kind. The children were playful, and the wife treated me almost like a sister. But inside, I was exhausted. My body was doing fine, but my mind was always on edge. Weeks passed. The dreams didn't stop, but I got used to them in a strange way. I began writing them down in a small notebook at night. I thought if I saw them on paper, maybe they'd lose their power. I was wrong. One evening, I was doing laundry outside when my phone buzzed. It was a message from another Filipina helper I had met during orientation at the agency. Her name was Marisol. We hadn't spoken in months. Her message was short. "Alina, did you work for the Rahmans in Dammam?" My fingers went stiff as I stared at the screen. I typed back a simple yes. "Why?" Her reply came instantly. "My cousin's there now. Something weird is happening." A chill ran down my back. I asked what she meant, and what she sent next made me sit down. Cousin said the husband's acting strange. He talks to the walls, laughs in his sleep. She saw black smoke in the bathroom mirror once. I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. After a few minutes, I told her to ask her cousin to leave that house immediately. She said they were already trying to arrange a transfer. That night, I didn't sleep at all. It confirmed what I had feared. Whatever had entered Mr. Rahman didn't really leave. Maybe it went quiet for a while, maybe it pretended to go, but it was still there, hiding, waiting. I hadn't imagined it. It was real. A few days later, I was at the grocery store with my new employer. While she was picking out fruit, I wandered toward the back to grab some rice. A man passed by me, tall, Arab, wearing a clean white thobe. I barely looked at him until he said my name. Alina. I turned quickly. It was Mr. Rahman. He looked different. His skin seemed thinner, almost grey. His smile was there, but forced. Too wide. The whites of his eyes were yellowed. I froze in place. "You're still dreaming about me," he said, his voice soft. "Aren't you?" I didn't speak. I couldn't. I just stared at him. His lips never moved after that sentence, but I heard something else. A whisper, right in my ear, like it was crawling into my brain. "You shouldn't have watched." That broke me. I dropped the bag of rice, turned around, and ran. My employer followed me out, confused, asking what had happened, but I just said I felt dizzy from the heat. I didn't mention Mr. Rahman. I didn't want to bring that name into this new home. That night, I burned the notebook where I had written all the dreams. But it was too late. From that day on, it wasn't just in my sleep anymore. I started seeing things while I was awake. Shadows moving in places they shouldn't. Black fingerprints on the mirror after I just cleaned it. A smell like burned cloth and something sweet, sickeningly sweet, would appear in the room out of nowhere. I prayed. Every night. I wasn't particularly religious before all this, but now I prayed like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. A week later, Marisol messaged again. My cousin left. She said she saw him crawling on the ceiling. I felt like throwing up. She told me her cousin packed her bags that same night and waited outside until sunrise, crying. That was it. I couldn't just sit still anymore. I needed to understand what this was. I needed to know where it came from, how to stop it, not just for me, but for anyone else who might go through what I did. I called my aunt back home in Iloilo. She's always been the one in the family people turn to for strange things. She's not an albulario, not officially, but she has that instinct, she just knows when something's wrong. I told her everything. From the start. I expected her to tell me I was being dramatic, that I needed rest, but she didn't. She stayed quiet for a long time and then asked a simple question. Did he bring anything back from that trip? I told her I didn't know. Maybe. His wife once mentioned he had touched or removed some old items from the house. Religious objects, she said. Then he opened a door, my aunt said. And something followed him out. What do I do? I asked her. You don't open that door again, she replied. You stay away from that family. Don't speak to him. Don't say his name again. And if it comes to you in your sleep, don't listen. Don't answer. Don't look it in the face. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. I thanked her and promised I'd do as she said. That night, I kept a small cross under my pillow. I didn't sleep much, but I didn't dream either. Maybe that was progress. Or maybe it was just saving strength for something worse. Because 2 nights later, the smoke came back. Only this time, it wasn't in a dream. I had just turned off the bedroom light when I noticed the air felt thicker. There was no wind, no movement, but the curtains swayed slightly. I sat up. A faint shape hovered near the ceiling, barely there, like a smudge of fog. Then it began to move. Down. Slowly. Toward me. I grabbed the cross under my pillow and held it tightly. My voice was shaking as I started to pray, whispered, broken words I hadn't said since childhood. The shadow stopped. And then it laughed. It wasn't loud, but it echoed. It didn't sound human. It sounded like it was made of 1,000 whispers all trying to laugh at the same time. I shut my eyes. I didn't open them again until morning. When I did, everything was quiet. But on the wall above my bed, 3 black fingerprints were smeared near the ceiling. That was when I knew I couldn't run from this anymore. Whatever followed Mr. Rahman back from that place, it wasn't done. And now, somehow, it had found me again. I didn't tell anyone about the fingerprints. I cleaned them quietly the next morning before the kids woke up. I tried to act like everything was normal, folding laundry, sweeping the floor, helping with breakfast. But inside, I was carrying something heavy, like a weight pressing on my chest all the time. I wasn't sure how much longer I could pretend everything was okay. The next Friday, I asked my employer if I could go to the market alone. She gave me some money and smiled, reminding me to get some fresh vegetables and a bag of rice. I nodded and left, but I had no intention of buying anything. I was going to meet someone. Through Marisol, I got connected with an older Filipina named Tita Nina. She had worked in Saudi for over 15 years and was known among the community as someone who knew things. People said she'd seen stuff, things most of us wouldn't even talk about out loud. Some thought she was just eccentric. But after what I'd been through, I didn't care if people called her crazy. I needed help. She met me in a quiet corner of the park behind the mosque, where the palm trees blocked most of the sun. She was small and soft-spoken, wearing a wide scarf that covered her head and shoulders. When I greeted her, she didn't smile. She just stared at me for a long second, then said, "You've seen it too." I felt my knees weaken. We sat on a bench, and I told her everything, from Mr. Rahman's strange behavior to the black smoke, the voice in my dreams, and the fingerprints on my wall. She listened without interrupting, her eyes fixed on the ground the whole time. When I finally finished, she said, "It's not just a spirit. It's not like the ghosts we know from home. What you saw, what followed that man, it's called a married. It's one of the older kinds of Jinn." I had heard of Jinn before, in hushed conversations, in stories shared during late nights. But I never imagined I'd be saying the word out loud, for real. They live in the spaces between this world and the next, she continued. And they don't forget. If one of them marks you, even once, they'll follow the scent. Especially if you see their face. I didn't want to believe it. I still wanted to think maybe I was just stressed, maybe I was imagining it all. But I wasn't. She told me that when Mr. Rahman went to that old house, he must have disturbed something sacred, an object, a book, a stone even. It didn't matter. What mattered was that it had been sleeping, and now it wasn't. And when he brought part of it back with him, everyone near him became exposed. Including me. I asked her, "Why now? Why still me?" "Because you saw," she said. "And because you felt fear. That's the opening it needs. It feeds on attention, on fear, on memory." I went quiet. Then she leaned closer and added, "But there's still a way to close the door." She handed me something small wrapped in red cloth. When I opened it, I saw a thin bracelet made of black thread and tiny beads that looked like dried seeds. In the center was a small charm, shiny, silver, shaped like an eye with no pupil. "Wear this," she said. "But more important than that, stop feeding it. Don't look for it. Don't talk to it. Don't write about it. Every time you think about it, it grows stronger." I took the bracelet, thanked her, and promised to try. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up gasping for air. But that peace didn't last long. 2 days later, my employer's son had a birthday party. The house was full of noise, children running around, laughter, music. I was in the kitchen preparing snacks when the lights suddenly flickered. Just for a second. No one else noticed, or if they did, they laughed it off. But I felt something. It was like something passed behind me, cold and fast, like a breeze, except all the windows were shut. I turned around. No one was there. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed and the house was finally quiet, I sat on my mattress, staring at the bracelet on my wrist. The charm had turned dark. I don't know how to explain it, it was just darker, like it had absorbed something. Then I heard a knock. 3 soft taps. Not at the door. At the mirror. I didn't move. The room was dim. Just the small nightlight in the corner was on. I could see the reflection of the bed, the wall, and the edge of the dresser. But in the mirror, I saw something that wasn't in the room. A figure. Standing still. No eyes. Just darkness where the face should be. And that awful grin again. I covered the mirror with a towel and whispered over and over, "You're not welcome. You're not real. You can't come in." I held the bracelet tightly. I remembered what Tita Nina had said, "Don't speak to it, don't feed it." Eventually, the room went quiet again. I don't know how long I sat there. Maybe hours. Maybe minutes. But I never looked back at the mirror. The next morning, the towel had fallen off. But the mirror was clear. After that night, I started wearing the bracelet every day, even in the shower. I prayed more. I kept my thoughts busy with good memories, old songs from home, recipes my mother taught me. Anything that would keep my mind from drifting back to that thing. And for a while, it worked. Until the last phone call. It was from Mrs. Rahman. I hadn't heard her voice in months. It was around noon when she called, and I almost didn't pick up. But something told me I should. She sounded tired. Broken. Her voice was shaky, like she had been crying for hours. "He's gone," she said. I asked her what she meant. "He disappeared," she replied. "He woke up one night screaming, said something was pulling him. Then he ran. I haven't seen him since." I reported it. "They think he lost his mind. But I know." She paused. "I know it took him." I didn't know what to say. What could I say? She didn't ask me to come back, didn't ask for help. She just needed someone to know. Someone who had seen it too. Before we ended the call, she said, "I tried to tell you back then, but I was scared." He brought back an amulet from that house. He kept it in the drawer next to the bed. Said it was part of his grandfather's things. I think that's where it began. I asked her if she still had it. "No," she whispered. "It burned itself." One night we heard a crackling sound, and the drawer caught fire. Nothing else. Just that. The line went quiet after that. She hung up. And just like that, I knew it wasn't over. The thing wasn't just attached to him anymore. It had started moving, marking others, spreading. That's what scared me most. Because if it was never about just one person, how many others had seen it since? And more importantly, who would it follow next? After that call, I stopped waiting for peace to return. I stopped hoping it would all just fade like a bad memory. It didn't. It wasn't going to. But something inside me shifted. I realized I couldn't keep running from it. I had to live alongside it, carefully, quietly, but I had to keep living. I didn't talk to anyone about what had happened after that. Not even Marisol. Not my family. Some things are too strange to explain. And even if I tried, what would I say? That I saw a man swallowed by something invisible. That shadows knew my name. Instead, I buried myself in routine. I worked harder. I kept myself busy with chores, books, the children, even silly little hobbies I never cared about before. I learned how to braid hair, how to bake bread, how to fold towels perfectly. Tiny things, but they gave me control. In a world that suddenly felt unpredictable, those small acts of order were all I had. The bracelet stayed on my wrist. Over time, the silver eye in the middle began to fade, its shine dulling like it had absorbed more than it could hold. I didn't replace it. I didn't ask what would happen when it lost its power. I just kept wearing it like armor. Some nights were easier than others. On good nights, I'd fall asleep without dreams. On bad ones, I'd wake up sweating, convinced I heard that low, wet laugh again. But I never looked in the mirror after dark. Not once. Eventually, the agency offered to send me back to the Philippines. My contract was ending, and they said there was a family in Quezon City looking for a housekeeper. I said no. Not because I loved being here. Not because I wanted to stay. But because I felt like I needed to finish something. Or maybe I just wasn't ready to go home carrying all this. One day, something strange happened, strange in a different way. I was cleaning under the bed in the children's room when I found a small wooden box. I thought it was just one of their toys, but when I opened it, there was a folded piece of paper inside. It looked old, yellowed at the edges, like it had been hidden for a long time. There was writing on it, in Arabic. I can't read Arabic well, but I recognized one word, Ain. It means I. I felt my fingers go numb. I took the paper outside and burned it, just to be safe. I didn't ask the children if it was theirs. I didn't tell my employer. I didn't want to speak that word out loud ever again. That night, I had a dream. A peaceful one. I was standing in a field back home, in Iloilo. The sun was low, warm on my face. I could hear roosters in the distance and the sound of water flowing through the small irrigation canals my grandfather used to walk along. There was no smoke, no voice, no eyes watching, just quiet. When I woke up, I cried. It wasn't because I was scared. It was because I had forgotten what peace even felt like. Weeks passed. The dreams didn't return. Not the bad ones, anyway. Just regular ones, simple, odd things like being late to catch a jeepney, or looking for my slippers in a crowded market. Normal dreams. Beautiful, boring, normal dreams. I still carried fear. It didn't go away completely, but it got smaller, softer, like a scar that stopped aching when touched. Then, one afternoon, while helping the children with their homework, the youngest boy, Omar, looked up at me and asked, Alina, why don't you look in the mirror when it's dark? I didn't answer right away. He was only 6. He didn't know what that question meant to me. Maybe he had just noticed my habit and was curious. But I couldn't lie to him either. Because sometimes, I said slowly, it's better to wait until morning. He nodded like he understood. Maybe he did. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for the first time in almost a year. The light was on. I was alone. I looked at myself, not just to check my hair or my face, but really looked. My skin was thinner. My eyes had changed. I had aged. But there was something else too. Something steadier behind my reflection. A kind of quiet strength I hadn't seen before. I didn't see the smoke, or the grin, or the darkness. I just saw me. The next morning, I called my family. I told them I'd be coming home soon. Not because I was running anymore, but because I was finally ready. Before I left Saudi, I visited Tita Nina one last time. I gave her the bracelet. She looked at me, surprised. Are you sure? I nodded. I think someone else might need it now, I said. She took it gently and smiled. You've become strong, she whispered. I smiled too. But I didn't say anything. Because strength isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's just the quiet decision to keep going. To open your eyes in the morning even when you're scared. To fold a towel neatly. To leave the mirror uncovered. To choose peace even when fear is still whispering in the corner. So yes, I still remember. But I'm not afraid anymore. Not of the shadows. And not of being seen.